Ohio State hasn't beaten Michigan in the game since 2019. Michigan has won 2 in a row, but now faces allegations that those last 2 games may have been assisted by some rule breaking. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you. You weren't here for you've only been here for the past year, the festivities of the past couple months, too. Who has more to prove in this game? Does Ohio State have more to prove that it can finally beat Michigan? Does Michigan have something to prove that its wins over Ohio State were legitimate?
Well, I think a couple of weeks ago, before this all started, I think the answer was very clearly Ohio State. So basically, it's just, do you think that gap is closed? I think in the short term, Ohio State has more to prove. I think this is a trend. If you lose, it's the quote from Major League: 1 game is one thing, 2 is 2 in a row, and 3 is a winning streak. Well, 3 would be a losing streak for Ohio State. So you have 3 in a row. That would be something to where you could point to and say, that actively kept you out of the playoff in 2021. It probably is going to keep you out of the playoff in 2023. Were it not for one loss by one team that wasn't even related to you in 2022, it would have kept you out of the playoff then. It would have been a trend that the Michigan game had not only been the game that you build to and then lose, but the Michigan game would have also kind of ruined your season. And I think Ohio State has more to prove this Saturday, to prove that they can get to that level, to prove that the last 2 years were kind of fluky, to prove that the last 2 years, however you want to view that, that is what Ohio State has to prove on Saturday. I think the Michigan, what they have to prove, this is a long-term thing. I think what Michigan has to prove, it would start on Saturday, but you're not really going to prove a lot that you can, hey, look, these last couple of years, they are valid, they are true. You're not going to prove that on Saturday. It's going to start on Saturday, or it could start on Saturday, but this is a long-term thing. This is something that you're going to see in 2024 and 2025 that Michigan is going to have to continually prove. So Saturday, it's Ohio State.
Yeah, this seemed in the offseason like a big legacy game for Ryan Day in particular. He'll be the head coach that's actually in the stadium on Saturday. Jim Harbaugh, by Big Ten suspension, will not be. Do you think that dynamic has changed? Does Ryan Day still have a lot more on his shoulders than, from a legacy standpoint, than Jim Harbaugh does?
Yeah, and I think we kind of talked about this on Buckeye Talk a little bit on the Monday pod as well. I think the gap is still very wide the more I think about this, because if you really think about all the allegations, part of the teams that they quote-unquote were sign stealing from was Georgia, and that didn't matter because Georgia still handled their business. Ohio State has to not only make sure they don't lose 3 straight to Michigan. They have to make sure that this 2021 class doesn't leave without a win over Michigan. They have to also play a role in proving that the only reason Michigan beat them is because they were quote-unquote cheating. So all of that still holds on Ohio State, while Michigan is just trying to prove something to Andrew's point, might not be able to be proven on Saturday. But everything Ohio State wants to do can be proven on Saturday.
It's going to be big for the fan bases, these kind of legacy discussions and who it means more for, and that's why we're doing these videos. But for Ohio State, I thought Jim Knowles gave a good answer today. You changed all these things based on what happened in last year's game, and now you find out that it might have been some other stuff going on in there, and he kind of very quickly said, that doesn't matter. It's about this team winning this game. And I think from that perspective, Ohio State does have a lot more on the line here. It has already been deprived of a playoff appearance once by losing at Michigan. It barely got in last year. This is its last chance before you expand to 12 teams, and they've been the team that has been on the outside looking in very narrowly more than anybody else in the 12-team or in the 4-team playoff era. To get in this year means something, and I think that alone and avoiding what, as you said, Andrew, would be a 3-game losing streak, not just back-to-back losses. I think both of those things are motivation enough that Ohio State is the team, and they seem to feel it. The way they talk about it today, I think they know they have something to prove on Saturday. Get the text 614-350-3315 and listen to Buckeye Talk all week wherever you can find podcasts.